everyone. Welcome to Tuesdays with Morrissey. I'm Adam Morrissey. Today I'm honored to be joined by Lee Walker. Lee served as the first president of Dell Computers, then was a professor and author, and now splits his time between Austin, Texas, and Umbria, Italy, where he owns and operates an olive oil farm. Lee, how's it going today?
Very well, Adam. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to have a conversation, a little bit about your story.
Sure.
What you learned along the way, kind of what lessons you impart to the students you taught or in your book, and then also a little bit about the connection you found between business, a meaningful life, and olive oil, because it's something I'm interested in as well. You have a great story. I read about it in your book, Imagination House, and the Dell experience was definitely a cornerstone of that book. What was it like to be courted by then college student Michael Dell to work with him on what was known at the time as PC Limited?
Yeah, let me think. So this we have to go back to early 1986, and my wife and I were planning a summer in France. I thought maybe finally the elusive French I would have a chance to advance my French skills, and met Michael. The chance encounter at a restaurant. What was that restaurant? Beijing's. It's no longer in business. It's out of the Arboretum. Excellent sesame chicken, by the way. And that's when we met. And I thought that my invitation that evening was to be a sweet man and be welcoming the new president of PCs Limited to Austin. I do not recall this gentleman's name, but he was there with his wife. And my book describes how I didn't misbehave, but I get off on these side tangents, and I got off on the side tangent of baseball. And made my friend who invited me very unhappy that he had invited me. And I thought that was pretty much it. I went home, didn't think about it at all, except in the future try to be better and not go off on these esoteric wild goose chases I seem to go off on. And Michael shows up at my doorstep 2 or 3 days later. All this is chronicled in the book you made reference to, and asked me to become president of his company, which completely took me aback because I was going to France. I wasn't looking for a job. I didn't really feel qualified for whatever it was he was offering. So it was a very quick no. And Michael describes it in some detail. He has an excellent book out just a year or two ago, which I can never remember book titles. I think it's something like...
I think it's Play Nice But Win.
Play Nice But Win. Thank you for rescuing me. Yes, exactly. He also writes about that encounter. Although it's fascinating to read his account. He talks about how I immediately grasped what he was talking about. I got the business model. I peered into his soul. I saw the whole deal. I mean, all of that is so sweet and kind. But to me, he was, actually just another bothersome young man coming around who wanted me to do something I didn't want to do.
Totally.
Anyway, but as I write in some detail, I ended up changing my mind. I think largely out of a sense of responsibility. I think that was probably a big part of it. I thought I was really worried that he was going to lose his company. And here I was gallivanting off to France, and then I would come back from France and discover that he had lost his company, and then I would be racked with guilt that I could have, should have, might have been helpful. And I got curious as to why the bank didn't seem to want me to be involved, so my curiosity got inflamed. But I think maybe the biggest backdrop was it was becoming clear that this thing called Moore's Law, which really isn't a law at all, but more of an observation, had implications that were almost beyond calculation. And the chance to kind of jump in and maybe be a teeny tiny part of that revolution, the PC revolution. I think it was a number of factors that caused me to change my mind.
Yeah. You talk a little bit about, some of the obstacles you all navigated together in the 4 years at Dell. What did you learn and take away from that time working with Michael?
Well, he's how gifted he is. He's astonishingly gifted. He's the son I never had. I've had 4 daughters, so I think that was probably part of it. It was about a 24, 25-year age difference. But what a joy to work with him. We were the 2-person management board of directors. Our board meetings were both of us just walking around this table and pitching, a globe back and forth. Just classic. Just total energy and bootstrapping all the way because we were operating on virtually zero capital. As were probably 100, I think there probably were several hundred emergent PC companies because there was no barrier to entry. I mean, all you needed was add in a PC week and a phone to take the calls, and off you went. So working with him was just, it was great fun, great fun. I think my biggest takeaway, there are many, but if I were going to distill it down to one thing, it would be, oh my goodness, best business model wins, or at least that's the way to bet. And if a business model is imagination made manifest in the world, you're dreaming up something and you're bringing it to realization in the world. It was really cool for me to go, oh, that thing I've been doing all my life, which is this very dreamy, spacey imagination thing I like to do. Oh, that actually has value in this world because if you can then crystallize that into a powerful business model and then execute against that model. Oh my goodness, you can actually create a ginormous company.
Yeah. Your book is called Imagination House. You've mentioned imagination several times. Why is the book called that, and what role has imagination played in your career and your life?
Yeah, I think it's my secret sauce. I used to think it was my secret, not weakness, but it's sort of like my big feet. I was constantly tripping over my big feet, or I'm 6'9", constantly hitting my head on the door. Imagination was yet one of those peculiarities that I possessed that tended to that I tended to trip over a great deal, bump my head on, as it were. So to me, it's just the world I live in. That was true when I was 20. I'm 82 now. It's true today. I'm pretty much infatuated with it, which is to say I love dreaming up stuff. I guess metaphorically, I love going into my inner space, my inner imagination house, and I do it pretty constantly during the day. I mean, situations arise, right? Some are difficult, some are not so difficult, some are in between. And probably the biggest room in my imagination house is my lens room. And I go in there constantly because I'm trying to find the best optimal lens through which to view whatever the situation is. I spend a great deal of time in the lens room. There are other rooms to be sure, but I think that's probably the largest room. Did you see the movie, what was it, Monsters, Inc., where there's jillions and jillions of doors?
Yeah.
There are jillions and jillions of lenses, the way it feels like in my lens room. And I'm just lens, trying to find what's the best way to look at this situation in terms of how to proceed. So anyway, it's something I'm a little bit goofy about.
No, totally. I mean, I've heard a story. Walt Disney had this thinking process that he would do where he would put himself first in the seat of a visionary. He would ask the question, hey, what could I do if anything was possible? Only then, after he exhausted the entire vision process, would he put himself in a place of an executor and say, hey, how practically would you do this? And then finally, after he's exhausted the execution process, he'd put himself in the role of the critic.
Yes, that's what's brilliant. Well, I certainly don't want to put myself in the league with Walt Disney. I mean, you're talking about a giant. I think it's important to remember, Adam, I am a teacher of freshman civic engagement at the University of Texas. I ride my bicycle down in the morning at 6 miles an hour, park my bike in my classroom. End of the day, sometimes it's dark. I come back up the hill at 3 miles an hour. So let's just make sure we've got perspective on this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard you talk a lot about seizing opportunity and courage. What do those concepts mean to you?
What does courage mean to me?
Yeah, courage and seizing opportunities.
And seizing opportunities, I see.
Related.
Yeah, I don't know that I view myself as an opportunity seizer. I've got to think about that a bit, but I would say as regards courage, it's certainly something I think about a great deal. It's something that I aspire to. I think one is, values like courage are something that are damn difficult to faithfully, relentlessly pursue consistently at all times. It's very, very difficult to be courageous at all times. And I think it has to do with a relentless examination of one's values, of what you care about. You care about a lot. And then trying to live up to those things you care about. I think that, to me, would be my working definition of courage. Trying to actually in the world live those things that you value, your values, and a relentless examination of that. One constantly falls short. I fall short every damn day. So every day today is an opportunity to do a little better. It has very much to do with, if we get back to the entrepreneurial process, maybe that's a way to come at it. You're kind of going through the day and you notice something. You notice an opportunity, you notice a problem, you notice something that's interesting. And then it sticks with you. You can't quite let it go. And then you start to imagine possible ways of dealing with that problem, that issue, that opportunity. And then is when the rubber and the road really connect, because if you come across an approach that you think makes sense, now comes that very difficult activity called acting, taking action. And I think that's where courage comes in, because I think all of us dream, and but I think it's the tricky part is actually doing stuff, and then having the courage to courage to observe objectively the outcome of your action. It's sort of a cycle, right? You're reattending, maybe reimagining, almost invariably making adjustments and acting. And so the courage is kind of, I guess I see it very much as part of the trilogy of the observation or attention, if you will, the imagination about what to do about that which you've attended. And then the third part, the courage, is taking action. I hope that was responsive to your question.
No, absolutely it was. And it was consistent. I had a guest a couple of weeks ago talking about a formula for change, more specifically a formula for positive change, keeping a lot of those ingredients. So one is like a vision. So that could be an example of, hey, what do I care about and what do I want to create? Once you have that vision, you're going to have awareness to the times where you're meeting it and the times when you're not. Yeah. The awareness to, hey, I'm doing something really good and in line with my values is just as powerful as, hey, the dissatisfaction you feel when you're not living up to it. And then she just describes it as first steps. What is the next small step you can take from where you are today to where you want to be, or where the vision is today versus where you want to be in the future?
Yeah, I like that a lot, and I at a less grandiose level, because that's pretty grand. That's big stuff. I'm pretty interested in the micro stuff, the kind of micro erosions of my soul. Those little fibs, those little. Each one which flex off a little piece of your integrity, because you're trying to stay whole, right? And so I'm interested. Churchill talked about big heroism and little heroism. And big heroism, he was big heroism, and that was fighting Hitler, right? The little, what he called heroism with small h, was the miner going off to the mine every day, the coal mine, to support his family, and knowing he would die at an early age, but slogging away anyway, So I'm interested, I think, in courage. I think the courage that fascinates me is maybe more at the micro level than the macro level, largely because I have so much more experience at the micro level than the macro level.
Yeah, no, I can definitely relate to that. How does like failure fit in with that cycle and courage?
Oh, for God's sakes. Let's see, failure. Well, at 82, do you have several days? Because I think I have several thousand failures. But to try to truncate it into a very brief answer, I think at the more macro level, as I go to school every day, I'm perpetually unhappy with my failure, and it was a failure, of my 11-year leadership at Capital Met. I was the chair of the regional transportation, bus and rail,
In Austin?
for Central Texas, from 1997 to 2008. Had to stop because my mama was. I couldn't do the Cat Metro thing and my mama thing at the same time, or I would have kept at it. But that's a long, I think, and not terribly interesting story. But I would just say the old cliche about generals tend to fight the last war in this war, and I thought that the issue revolved around activating the environmental group that I'd been part of when we had our successful Save Our Springs campaign back in the early 90s. It turned out that was just a blunder. I should have come at it more from a real estate, commercial, business standpoint, because I knew Austin was doubling every 2-3 years. I'm sorry, I'm confusing this with Moore's Law. That doubled every 2 or 3. Austin was doubling every 10, 11 years, 12 years. And it wasn't hard to see that we needed to have a transit network that would match that growth. And I just really failed to anywhere near put together the imagination, the plan, the execution. And really all we have today is a small regional metro line that I was successful in getting. So it wasn't zero, but I would say on a scale of 0 to 100, I rate a solid 4 or 5. Really, I think if the public at large knew the degree of my shortfall, I would be run out of town on that rail that we built. That's kind of at the macro level. At the micro level, I regret so much. Oh my God, I regret so much not being with my giant Polish grandmother before she passed away and getting stories about our Polish heritage, for example. I have lots of failures in that regard. My failures tend to be more of that sort, or at least those are the ones I'm, in some respects, more willing to talk about, because like that Cat Metro failure is just so galling, just so damn galling. But anyway, I think the point is you can't, if you're doing stuff, you're going to have, quote, failures, right?
Yeah.
And it's important for me and important for you, important for all of us. Our failures are not us. They were we went to Las Vegas. We put our money on red. and it came out black. There's so much chance and circumstance involved in these things, and so it's important not to. I think if you're an entrepreneur, you have failures by definition. I had several of my little businesses did not work out when I was younger. So again, I hope that's somewhat responsive to your question.
No, yeah, totally. When you're sharing that, I was thinking about Theodore Roosevelt's "Man in the Arena" speech.
Yeah.
When you're in the arena,
yep.
Stuff's going to happen that goes both ways.
Yep. And if you're, baseball, a great hitter, a damn good hitter is going to connect on 3 out of 10, right? So you got seven failures, and you're in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, like we lose connection with failures. Like so rarely is there a failure in the movie. Maybe there is in the middle. Make one of those hero's journeys arcs, but like now I think about like the sports these days. It's like you can't lose a game and have a good season. For instance, in college football.
Yeah.
So I like what like Deion Sanders is doing at Colorado to normalize failures on a small scale.
Yeah,
like you can lose some games and still have a good season.
Yeah. And frequently that loss, when they do the replay, I mean, the fingertip, the foot landed a half inch outside the sideline or a half inch short of the goal line, and oh my God, it's you're a failure, you're a winner based on that little, this much. And so I do think that does raise an interesting question, because it causes many of us, me included, to be preoccupied with that little extra, right? And be getting back to, I think, the relentless examination of what we care about and trying to do better and better at it. I think hoping that not that the failures will go away so much, but on the big things, maybe they'll be mitigated somehow.
Yeah. You mentioned like some of the things you care about. One of them is your teaching.
Yeah.
At UT. When you're teaching a group of 18 to 20-year-olds, what's one thing you hope they take away from their time with you?
Yes. Well, let me just say, I doubt there's ever been a teacher who loves teaching more than I do. I love.
That's amazing.
Oh my God! I think
it reminds me of a saying I heard: "Whoever has the most fun wins."
Well, I think if you could be in my hip pocket and come with me on a day, I think you would be just so jealous.
I'm in. I'll work with Kim and we'll do it, man.
Oh my God! No, I mean. My students are 18, 19, 20, 21, and and many of them stay in touch. I mean, I've been doing this for 33 years. I have very close, extremely close connections with students from my very first class 33 years ago. But your question is, what's the one thing? If you're going to pick one thing, I think the one thing would be, I think that the phrase knowledge, skills, and values comes to mind. I mean, you go to school to acquire knowledge, right? To acquire skills. And then I would argue, I think the values word is important in there. And if there's one lesson I hope that my students take away, is this, that in my own life, and I think in the lives of the people I try to bring to my class, and the stories that I try, because we teach through stories, of course, is that the values thing is at least as important as the knowledge and skills thing. I think that's a surprise to most people, because I think it feels a little bit woo-woo, and as a consequence of people believing it's a little bit woo-woo, you see the liberal arts, which I think tends to be the area where you're picking up the values thing. That's increasingly less interesting to policymakers, aka legislatures.
Sure.
And I don't see this as I just see it as a true. Well, we're all captives of our own experience. I look at my own long life, And it has been those values thing that have actually been the key to this extraordinarily generous life I've been given, but rich, full life I've been given. And so, so I'm a captive of my own experience. My own experiences, I have a number of stories, and they're value-based. And they were the hinge, they were hinge moments. So I hope that they'll walk away with the idea that, okay, knowledge is important, skills are important, but oh my God, that values thing is at least as important. I think it's counterintuitive for many people, and I try to make it more intuitive.
Awesome, man. Yeah, values have been extremely meaningful for me as well. I think one thing that makes them pretty simple is I have a friend that would just say, hey, when you're thinking about your values, think about the things that are alive when you're feeling at your best, and think about the things that aren't there when you're feeling at your worst.
Yeah. That's a very nice way of putting it. I agree entirely with that.
Yeah. I have to ask, I've had a chance to have your olive oil. Why not show up? I'm a big, it's kind of strange, but like, I'm an olive oil fan. I think I give it as a lot of housewarming gifts because it's been an ancient housewarming gift for, prosperity and such. How'd you get into olive oil?
Feet first. Yeah, I mash them with my own feet. That's what gives it the exquisite, unique flavor. No, they're actually mashed under very large stones. How did I get into the olive oil business? Well, again, I think it's a long story. I'll try to truncate quickly and say that it didn't start with the oil. It started with, let's say it started with the smells. My wife and I were walking an old pilgrim trail in Umbria, 25 years ago. And I asked her, what was it? What was I smelling? And she said, you're smelling all these herbs, gardens. The contadini, the farmers had each one would have a garden, and they abandoned this area. It was a totally abandoned area we were walking through. They abandoned their gardens, and their gardens have grown feral. And so now what you're smelling are all these herb gardens. And it was in May, as I recall, so we were smelling the ginestra, which is the yellow flower that populates the hills of Umbria. And I just remember just kind of reeling, my sensory overload. And we were in the midst of olive trees, which I don't think were emitting any odor, but they certainly were emitting a beautiful, seeing the oak and olive trees that dominate northern Umbria were in the picture. And to bring the story to a close, I decided to buy this abandoned place. It was just so forlorn. It just looked like it was in need of love. I've never seen a more forlorn place in my life. And with it came ultimately, through a series of steps, the olive trees that came with the place. So the olive trees were sort of the icing on the cake, as opposed to the cake itself. But now it's fun to have this little olive oil business and to take the profits that we make from it and make those contributions back to the earthquake victims. We're on the Apennine Mountains are a fault line, so lots of big earthquakes, and a lot of people need help dealing with those. And so it's fun to plow those profits back into that area. So it's a bit of a side business, but it's. I'll tell you what. Again, Adam, if I could put you in my hip pocket, there is nothing more glorious than the fall day when you're out with your net. You put your nets under the tree. You're almost milking the trees. You're running your hand down the branches. They're very soft and scraping, as it were, the olives, and they fall to the net beneath. And then you move to the next tree, and of course you're BSing with the other people, picking about who's doing what to whom in the valley. It's a great chance to get caught up on the gossip, right? And the goats are kind of running around, their little bells around their neck, so that's kind of fun. And then you run the olives down to the frantoio, the masher. You got to. It's making orange juice. Good orange juice
Yeah.
is to mash good fresh oranges right away. Good olive oil is mashing the olives right away. So the thing you have there is pure olive oil pressed. I mean, same day as we pick the olives.
Wow. Are there any like olive oil like wisdom mantras or like parallels to the outside world?
There probably are.
Cool.
and I would love it if I knew any of them. No, all I know is it's just damn fun to pick, and even more damn fun to eat after you have them. And the key, I think, though, is the freshness. Picking, mashing, bottling, trying to foreshorten the time in between the picking, the mashing, the bottling. And that oil that bottle is of such a high quality. I think we sell out almost immediately. We have a subscriber list. It's probably the best business in the world in terms of there's just no inventory because it sells so quickly.
Awesome. Curious, you've been really gracious with your time. Before I let you go, do you have any book recommendations for listeners? We'll make sure to definitely have links to Imagination House, but curious if others stand out.
Well, let's see. I just finished Going Infinite, Michael Lewis's book on SBF. I think it's a fun read. He's an excellent writer. All his books are excellent, but I think it's sort of the latest kind of casino story, the latest Ponzi story. These sort of scam stories come in different flavors, but they're always the same damn thing, and that is you lose your money. Who was the Madoff? Bernie Madoff. There's this kind of, what is the old expression? History never repeats itself, but it rhymes. You have these just kind of rhyming Ponzi schemes, right? So that's an excellent book. I think I'm rereading. I like big reads. I really like Shirer's 65 book I'm rereading right now, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. I just think it's so interesting to see how that sophisticated culture, the German culture, was hijacked by a bunch of really brilliant thugs. And I think I see, we won't go down this path, but the potentialities. Again, are we in the formation of a rhyme today of that which has occurred in the past? I think that's interesting. I think the book, The Sixth Extinction, is extraordinarily good about climate change and its implications. I won't bore you with all the esoteric Russian books I read because nobody reads.
Maybe just one esoteric Russian book. If you had to pick one esoteric Russian book, what would it be?
I will not do that because if I pick Chekhov over Lermontov or over Turgenev, I would be committing a sin. But I very much like the short stories of Chekhov, the short stories of Lermontov, the short stories of Turgenev are, for me, just classic. I think there's an excellent book, Christ Stopped at Eboli, in Italian. Oh, and but of course, that one has. Where possible, I like to read in Italian and Russian, so I do have this kind of peculiar thing. But all these books are available in English. But this classic book, that actually the original of this book, Christ Stopped at Eboli, was written by Carlo Levi, and he wrote it on butcher block paper while he was hiding from the Nazis back in the 40s. And it turns out that the original copy of that, with all the scratch throughs and the pencil writing on butcher block paper, that exists down here in our local library, at the Harry Ransom Center. So you can actually hold that original. But that's a very good book in Italian.
Very good. What's the best way for people to keep up on with Lee?
The best way to keep up with me, well, it's not hard. I move so slowly. I mean, I'm 6'9", 250 pound 82-year-old guy that I move at at the velocity of a slow snail. So keeping up with me, really, I think the way to keep up with me is hang out down at the Littlefield Cafe at the University of Texas, because my office, after 33 years, my office is the third table in from the door at the Littlefield Cafe. If you're looking to find me, that's probably where I am, either by myself reading or meeting with a student. And you're always welcome to barge in, because that's the kind of accidental stuff that makes for a nice day, don't you think?
Totally. Well, we'll definitely link to the olive oil company, and I definitely hope to cross paths with you again in the future. Thanks for coming on the show.
Well, I love it, Adam. Your questions have been excellent. Thank you. It's been fun. Thank you.